In John chapter 4, you find that famous story of Jesus with the woman at the well, and they have an incredible encounter, and her heart is open to God, and her life is changed, and you see her immediately. She's become a believer, and immediately, without a day, without 24 hours, she's gone back to her friends and family and neighbors, and she's begun to spread the word about Jesus. And that often happens with somebody who first comes to Christ, and it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And so she's saying, come on and see what I've experienced. She's excited. Her life's changing. She says, come with me and take a look. And so now, as we get to the passage we're going to read here, she's coming to Jesus, and it says there's a crowd of people coming. If there was a church service in Jesus' day, this would have been the closest thing you had to it. He's about to minister to a group of people, and his disciples are there around him. And we pick up in verse 30. And it says, they came out of the town and they made their way toward Jesus. And I want you to notice what the disciples were thinking about. I want you to think about what reality they were living in, what dimension they were living in. They were with Jesus, they were following Jesus, they were in the ministry of Jesus, and now here comes a whole group of people to meet Jesus, and I want you to think about what was on their mind. What does it say, verse 31? Meanwhile, Jesus' disciples were urging him. They were trying to make ministry plans in that moment. They were trying to navigate Jesus and move things into a place where they could get lunch. They wanted some lunch, and they wanted Jesus to eat some lunch, and they had been on a mission to get some food, and they came back and they were saying, Jesus, come on now, it's time to eat. And this crowd of first-time guests, this crowd of unbelievers, this crowd of hungry seekers were right within grasp, and Jesus' disciples were focused on helping meet their own needs in that moment and taking Jesus to meet his own needs in that moment. Jesus goes on to say, I have important work to do. I have food that nourishes me that's not the food here. My work is to do the work of God. And we come now to verse 35, and he says, listen, you have a saying. You talk about the harvest being 4 months away. But I tell you, and here it is, open your eyes and look at the fields. Open your eyes and look. They had a desire. They had a plan they wanted Jesus to enact. And Jesus wanted them to focus on something else. Jesus wanted them to see something else that they were not seeing. He said, look at the fields. They're ripe for harvest. Verse 36, even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life. He's saying, these people are the main thing right in this moment that we need to be focusing on. He says, don't look into the future. It's not the future. It's right now. He's saying we have a window of opportunity that will close. It's been opened. It's open right now, and it will close. The fields are ripe. I want you to open your eyes. Friends, I want to tell you, we are in a season. We are in a window of opportunity. We are in a moment that we are going to get to meet people, more people than what we've seen historically every single year. Typically, like the last couple of years, we've served over 10,000 people on Easter Sunday across all of New Life, across Chicagoland. It's an incredible moment. It might not be that way in other countries. It might not be their way in other cultures, but in Chicago, more people than ever are open and looking for a place to worship, even if they don't know Jesus. And so what we find is we find crowds coming. And depending on what we're looking at, depending on what we're focused on a Sunday morning, we're going to have a very different outcome. Jesus wanted his disciples to see something they weren't already seeing. He wanted something to pop out for them. He wanted them to put on their 3D glasses. He wanted them to see another dimension. They were focused on what they needed. He wanted them to focus on what these people needed. They were focused on the here and now. He wanted them to focus on the eternal. And he was saying, this is our moment. Am I hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Do I want to eat some lunch? Sure, I want to eat some lunch, but there's something that I see that's happening in this moment that's more important than these other needs. What was it? It was people. It was new people. It was people far from God who were having a moment to meet Jesus. I actually have a picture here from one of our New Life locations. Pretty cool location. Love this location. This is New Life Montclair. I got to serve there for 10 years. And this is a picture from Easter Sunday. And you'll notice the crowd. You'll notice the foyer. There's a lot of work and hard work going into it. But here's what I want you to see a little bit clearer. I want you to put on the spiritual glasses and focus. Now focus a little more, focus. A little more focus and see the guest among us. Because if we aren't looking for it, we may miss the opportunity. See, a first-time guest has a lot stacked against them, don't they? They don't know anybody. They've never been here. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know what's going to happen. They're a little anxious. They're a little nervous. They don't know why we do what we do. Stuff doesn't make sense to them. They don't know when you say around the bend, the activities room, and past that, that's where the bath. They don't know what that means. And on top of all that, they've got their own fears, don't they? Do you remember coming to church for the first time? If you didn't grow up in this church, you had to come here for the first time. And when you come to a place for the first time, you see things differently. And I'll meet people and they'll say, wow, this wasn't what I expected. And it led me to think, what in the world did you expect? How many people have been to church and they've had some horribly awful negative experiences? Their experiences in the past have led them to believe certain things about what they're going to experience when they come into your doors. Not to mention what the media says about Christians and churches. They tend to promote and lift up on media the stuff that's funky and weird and crazy. People were embarrassed to call Christians, and they're saying that's what church is. You've got all kinds of scandals and all kinds of issues, and you say, do you want to come to church? And people say, no, thank you. And as soon as they say that, they're thinking something about what church is going to be like. And if they come to visit us, they've got to get past all those hurdles. What are they going to say? Are they going to judge me? What are they going to think? What am I supposed to wear? Where am I going to go? Is it going to be weird? What are they going to do with my kids? Are my kids going to be welcome? Am I going to be welcome? I'll never forget my first time coming to New Life. It'll be 20 years ago this August, and I remember I showed up late. We were only in one location at the time. We were meeting at IIT, meeting at a college campus, and I walked up the steps, and the service had already begun. So now I'm already behind the 8 ball, right? Now I'm really going to stand out. Now I'm the guy everybody's going to look at. What am I going to expect? What am I going to experience? So I'm walking up the doors. I come into the foyer. Everybody's already in the time of worship. And there's a guy at the door who sees me. He welcomes me. He says, I'm glad you're here. Come over here. Come on in. He gives me a big hug. He opens the door and he sends me. And I had never really experienced that at a church. And I've been at churches growing up all my life. Now, when he hugged me, I felt a couple things, and they were mostly weird things. Like, why are you hugging me? First of all, he double bear hugged me. He had both of my arms pinned at my side. And then he picked me up off the floor. My feet were dangling. I'm not saying I recommend this. I'm just saying this what happened. I couldn't get out, and I was like, okay, yeah, nice to meet you too. You weirdo. And after he put me down and I walked away, and I was like, okay, that was weird. I felt something else. Mostly I felt loved. Mostly I felt like that guy really wanted me to be here. Mostly I felt like I was seen and I was noticed. And even though I was late, I was in the right place. I didn't feel so much like an outsider. I felt loved. And that was important for me because I was very lost and lonely. I was like an orphan at that stage in my life. My parents were divorced. I'd been from church to church. I'd never experienced anything of substance about God, and I didn't know what to expect. And when I came in, that experience started the day. Of course, I walked into a very powerful worship experience where people were engaging in God. Everybody was prepared and ready and serving, but they were doing it in love and excellence, and I was sold. I believed that there was another reality I could be living, but it started with that guy at the door. See, there's a lot of first impression, a lot of things to get over in the first impression, but a good first impression can help people get past a lot. We like to say the sermon starts in the parking lot. We like to talk to our parking team and say, you don't realize how important your role is. It might be more important than the pastor's. And I'm not fluffing, I'm serious. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people who drive around and around and they can't find parking or they can't get the interest and then they drive away. I've heard it over and over. So the guy out there at the door in the street with the nice, clearly marked uniform who's got the baton and he's waving people in and he's smiling and he's glad you're there and you're not a problem. You're not a bummer. You're not getting in his way. He's been there to help serve you and he welcomes you in and you're like, okay, I know where to go. And he points you over to the other guy who's in there, and he's like, come on in, right over here, right over here. And if you've got a spot for a guest, that's even better, right? You pull into your spot and you're like, okay, all of a sudden I'm starting to feel like, okay, I'm in the right place. Psalm 68, verse 6 says, God sets the lonely in families. Our God is many things, but mostly he's a father. Mostly he sees people and he wants to put people in a family. That's what he does. That's who he is. When Jesus taught us to pray, he didn't say pray to the man upstairs. He didn't say pray to your boss. He didn't even say pray to the deity. He said, when you pray, you say, our Father. That's Jesus' idea of how we should look at God. And when he looks at the lost people, he wants to put them in a family, so he sends them our way. And they drive past. How many of you heard the stories about people driving past a couple weeks in a row before they actually get the nerve to come in? I've heard it multiple times. People are scared. People have had a lot of bad experiences. People don't know what to expect. By the time they get the nerve to park their car and walk through the doors, oh, God forbid if we ignore them or we make them feel like they're a burden to us or we make them feel like we would rather go get lunch right now and take care of ourselves than deal with you people, right? Unfortunately, I've experienced that. I've gone to churches where nobody acknowledged me. It was so weird. Have you ever done that? Go visit some churches. Seriously. Get a fresh perspective. See how you feel when you don't know where the bathroom is, where you don't know when stuff starts, when you don't know what it's supposed to be like, and where you put your kids and what things are like. It is a weird thing. And if you've been too long in one place, you need to get out and experience being the new person. One place I went to, I walked in, nobody acknowledged me. They did their whole service. When they went to greet each other, everybody was talking and hanging out with each other. And I stood there and I was like, man, I feel like I don't belong here. The service ended and I walked out and there was no embrace. There was no greeting. It was like the preacher walked by me and he said, hey, good to see you. And that was the only handshake I got. And I felt like, man, these people, they're here for themselves. And I don't know if I belong here. But the Bible says that God sets the lonely in families. And it's pretty interesting that our purpose statement says we exist to be a what? A family of love. That's what it's all about. And you work so hard. Whether it's in leading worship or in the tech ministry or in children's ministry or on the stage or in the guest services or in security, you're doing so many important things that it's easy to forget that ultimately what we are, if we're working well, if everything is the way God wants it to be, we're ultimately a family of love. I think that's why God makes it an important qualification for a leader, a spiritual leader. In 1 Timothy 3, he says the overseer must be a couple things, and one of them is he must be hospitable. You know what hospitality is? Hospitality is helping outsiders become insiders. That's pretty much it. It's using your resources. It's leveraging what you have. It's leveraging your relationships, leveraging your stuff, leveraging your possessions to help outsiders become insiders, helping people far away become family. And there are a lot of people far away, aren't there? Do an exercise with me right now. And I want you to think about somebody you know that needs to come to know Jesus. It could be a friend, a family member, a coworker, a neighbor. Think about somebody. Name them. Just name them in your head. I've got a name. I've got two names in my head right now. I'm imagining their faces. My neighbor on my left, my neighbor on my right. They need Jesus. They need to become a part of the family of God. And if they were to ever show up in our church service, I'm thinking, what would they experience? Would they feel like they were wanted? Would they feel like they didn't know what to do? Would somebody guide them in? One man told me, he said, I was at church, and he said, my very first time in, I felt like I was on a conveyor belt. I was ushered in. The parking team ushered me in up to the door. The guy at the door ushered me into the lobby. The guy in the lobby ushered me up to the welcome booth. They gave me a gift. They helped me sign my kids in. And then the ushers ushered me all the way into my seat. From the street to the seat, I was led in, and then the worship team took over, and they began to get into praise and worship and lead. And I felt like I was being carried right in from my outside faraway place, right into the presence of God. And I thought, wow, and that guy stuck around, and he stayed, and he felt years later now, years becoming an elder, it felt like, you know what, this is a family that I belong in. And I want to tell you, every single saint is responsible for this. You might think it's the pastor's job to help guests feel welcome. But the reality is the pastor doesn't even get to that person until about 5 or 6 of us have crossed their path. And they've already decided, by the time they sit down and they hear the first 5 minutes of the message, they've already decided whether or not they belong here, whether or not this is a place for them. It's incredible. And the sermon, it really is important. But the sermon is housed, it's like a diamond in a ring. It's held by the clasps of everything that's going on. And if any of those are broken, it doesn't matter how good the sermon is. These people feel like they've been snubbed. They haven't been welcomed. This isn't the place for them. Every single saint is responsible for helping people far away become family. Are you with me? But especially the saint who serves on a Sunday morning team. Now, I know what you're thinking. You think, I'm on the tech team. I don't barely see anybody for the first time. I'm all the way in the back. But I want to tell you, everything we do, from our rehearsal to the way we set up our signage, to the way we prepare a parking lot, to the way that we clean things, to the way that we think about how is this guest who's coming in this crazy place, it's busy, there's momentum, there's a lot of commotion, they don't know what to expect. How are we preparing for them? How are we getting ready for them? How are we making sure that the words on the screen match the songs that are being sung so they are led into worship? How are we as an announcer speaking words that they understand? As a worship leader, we're talking to the people, we're telling them why we sing and why we lift our hands, and they're like, oh, that makes sense. And we're not just ignoring them. Guests aren't a side note to the main thing. Guests are the main thing. Jesus said this, Luke 19:10, he said, I came to seek and save the lost. The religious leaders said, how come you're hanging out with those people, and why are you focused on those people? And he said, that's why I came, that people far from God would become family of God. That's what it's all about. And as Jesus' family, we also are seeking. We put on our glasses. Every single Sunday, we put on our glasses and we think, and we look, and we think, where is that guest? Where is that outsider? You're a worship leader. You got your glasses on. You're a tech team. You're preparing. You got your glasses on. You're thinking about it. You're thinking, I'm looking for where the guest, where the outsider is, where they're going to get lost, and we want to move them in. We want to move them forward. It means we have an eye out for them. Now, maybe you think, you know what? I don't know if I buy into this whole thing that we should be so focused on the first impression. I'm not really sure about that. I think church is more about fellowship and family. Should we really be? Isn't that what the world does? Isn't that what like hotels and hospitality teams and all that stuff, like for business and money? And I don't know if focusing on the first impression is really going to help me have that family vibe. Well, let me tell you something. If you were to invite me over to your house, it would probably smell a little better, look a little better, taste a little better, feel a little better than if you weren't having company. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you're having company over, you start to clean up. You start to think about, oh man, I've been walking past that pile of dirty clothes all week long, but we're going to put that away because we're having company. You say, you know what, it's just the way it smells in my foyer. It just kind of smells a little danky, and we just know that. But you know what, we're having guests. We're going to get some Febreze. And a little bit in the kids' room, too. You say, you know, we don't usually have snacks, but we're having guests. You know, honey, go to the store and get some pastries. Babe, just take out the Oreos. They're stale, babe. We're not putting stale Oreos out for our guests. Go get some fresh pastries. Light the candle. Turn on some music. And all of a sudden, what has happened to your family? When your kids come home that day from school, the house smells better. It feels better. It tastes better. And now everybody in your family is having a better experience because you decided to focus on the guest. Because you decided to be hospitable. Because you said, I'm not going to think about us and what we're experiencing and what we need and how we need to get lunch, Jesus. I'm going to put my glasses and I'm going to open my eyes and I'm going to see that people on the outside are coming. And I want to help people far away feel like family. And people who are really good at hospitality, they do it second nature. But for the rest of us, We got to be intentional about it. We got to think about, what is the guest experiencing? I love being around some people. My brother Alex, man, that guy is the most hospitable, him and his wife, people that I know. They are constantly thinking, what are people experiencing when they come to our house, when they get our invitation to our kids' party? I mean, they are thinking about your experience. And because of that, people have flocked around them, and they've been a warm place for people to grow, and they're a safe place. And I say, man, I want to be like that. So I want our church to be like that. And I think Jesus wants our church to be like that. So that when somebody who's far from God, who barely gets up the nerve to come to church after they drove around for the first 3 weeks, and they finally park their car and they walk through our doors, they don't find us in huddles. We're outside, opening the door for people. We're not waiting for them to come in and figure it out. We're not focused on ourselves. We're not just planning songs and planning tech and doing things that we understand. We're thinking, what are they experiencing? People experience with their 5 senses, and all of those are important for a good first impression. But there's another sense that's the most important, and that's that people feel loved. If people were to meet Jesus, whenever you see them meeting and he has an encounter with them and their hearts are open, over and over, you see people feeling loved. They're seen, they're noticed, they're acknowledged, they're loved, they're accepted. I love the woman who came begging for healing, and he says, daughter, go. He calls her daughter. There's this family, there's this connection. Do people feel loved? Maybe you say, well, I only have 15 seconds with those people. Maybe 5 seconds. Okay, because you're at the door, or you're in the parking lot, or you're making the coffee. Well, did those 15 seconds with you make that person feel loved and welcomed? What a great question. What a great question. Some of you are building guys. Some of you are cleaning. Some of you are behind the scenes, or you're doing administration stuff, and you only have like 2 seconds. Somebody walks past you and you've got one word to say to them. Does your face show them that you love them and that it's a good thing that they're there? Or you got so filled with tasks and you got there last minute and now you're late and now you're freaking out and so didn't show up and you didn't plan it, you didn't call, and now you're freaking out, and when somebody shows up and they walk past you, they don't feel love. They feel something though. Don't they? We are a family of love. Many people who walk through our doors, maybe the majority of people who walk through our doors, they've never really experienced a healthy family. Think about it. Think about how many people we meet from a broken home or a dysfunctional home, a place where they're not really accepted for who they are, that they have to prove themselves, they have to fight, there's a lot of manipulation, there's been abandonment, people have left. And so people become a part of the family of God, and they get the chance to experience something different. But before they know if they fit in, they got to come for the first time or the first 5 times. And so when they do, when they walk through our doors, it's our desire that they would have an exceptional guest experience every single time. Exceptional. You know what that means? It means they say, wow. That's the word they should be saying. Wow. You think, man, what do we want people to say when they come through New Life Bridgeport, when they come through New Life Hobart, when they come through New Life Montgomery, New Life Elgin? What should they say? Wow. Why? Because they don't experience that kind of love at their job. They don't experience that kind of love at the Y. They don't experience that kind of love anywhere else they go, even when they go to their family sometimes, and they say, wow, they thought about us. They cared about us. They wanted us here. It's making me start to believe maybe God wants me here too. So we put on our glasses and we see things through the eyes of a first-time guest, and we start to ask ourselves, what do they see? What do they feel? And what does it make them feel when, here's a couple of examples. They walk through the door. What do you think people feel when they walk through the door and no one acknowledges their presence or offers to guide them? Do you think they feel loved? What do they feel when they ask if there's where to go and somebody says, down over there, around there, and they don't ask them to their destination? Do you think they feel loved? What do they feel? Do they feel like, hey, the God's arms are open to me, reaching for me? You know, some people stumble. They can barely reach out for God a little bit. I love that James says, if you draw near to God, he will draw near to you. He's ready. In fact, he's chasing, if you think about the lost son, right? He's running. As soon as that boy turned around, as soon as that boy got to the edge of the town, Dad wasn't like, well, you know what? I see him, but I'm gonna read the paper and just kind of figure out. Let him make his way over here. Nope. Dad, the dignified, jumped up, looked, saw him, ran to him, put his arms around him, hugged him, kissed him, said, my son, come on. That's a pretty good picture, isn't it? What do people experience? How about when they go to sign their kids into Kid Zone and they can't find it? One time we went to a church and we were there for an event and we had to sign our kids in, and we had our first kid. Remember that? Remember first kids? How many of you got one kid right now? Yeah, it's fresh and new, right? It's exciting, and everything is like disinfect everything and change their clothes all the time. And if the binky falls, you got 5 more in your pocket. You could pull one out and throw the old one away. And we had one kid, and we went to this church event, and we sat down, and my wife said, where do I take my son? He was just a baby. He was just 1 year old. And she took him downstairs. They said, oh, downstairs. So she's looking around. She's trying to find it. And there's a room with a guy with a baby in it. And so she says, is this the nursery? And he's like, yeah. You could just leave him right there. And she goes, okay. Like, this is my heart. Okay. But it was a new life. So she thought, okay. I mean, that's something. So I'm going to leave him here. And then she goes, well, is there like a sign-in or something? And he goes, oh, here. He takes a piece of paper and he rips it. He says, here, write his name on this. And she's like, really? And he says, yeah, just write his name down there. And so she's like, okay, do you have a pen? And he's like, oh, no. So she goes to her purse, she gets a pen, she writes his name down. She comes back upstairs where I'm sitting there enjoying the service. And every 5 minutes, she goes, do you think I should go get Isaac? No, I don't think you should get Isaac. How about, I think we should leave him down there. Do you think I should go get Isaac? Babe, no, like, we gotta be present. I mean, my wife wanted to be present, and she could not think about anything except the fact that she did not feel like her kid was safe because there was no thought put into it. It was a last minute thing. That guy, I don't know what he was thinking. I'm not dissing that brother. I'm just saying, man, we miss what guests and first timers are experiencing when they come in and we're not ready for them. When they come in and we haven't thought about them. When they come in and we don't direct them and we don't help them and we don't think, I wonder what that mom is thinking about with her one little kid. Oh, yeah, it's fine. You know all the children's workers. You know they've been background checked, but she doesn't know that. You know that they've disinfected everything, but nobody told her that. What if you said, hey, ma'am, we love kids. We're so excited you're here. Come on, let me show you the nursery. Let me show you. We have workers here. They've all been background checked. We train them. We disinfect everything. In fact, take a look at the nursery. We just painted it because we're just so excited to have you with us. Do you have any questions? Totally different experience. What do they feel when they walk to a table with fresh pastries and the coffee it smells great and it's excellent at the refreshment table? What do they feel? Wow, you guys thought about me. What do they feel when they ask where the kids ministry is and the greeter walks them to the right place, introduces them to the right person, and asks if they have any questions? And by the way, there's no donation box next to the donuts. Imagine that at a family gathering. You just don't do it. It's like, hey, we are so happy you're here. We've prepared for you. Man, have some refreshments. How do they feel when somebody in a clean, clearly marked parking jacket or vest meets them in the street with a smile and directs them to the next parking attendant who ushers them in and guides them into their parking spot with clear direction and clear concern? Love doesn't say it's not my job. It says, what's it going to take to give this person the experience where they know that they're loved? Not long ago, 2 years ago, during this Easter season time, we sent out a mailer like many of us do. Many of your locations have done this, and there's other ways of reaching out. And so many guests are coming and they're showing up. And 2 years ago, I met a girl named Jen. She had gotten the invitation in the mail. She lived not far from there. Later, I would learn that she tried to commit suicide 2 times that year. She was a heroin addict. Her life had fallen apart. She had lost her kids. She grew up as an atheist for 40 years, and she got an invitation to church. She took that invitation and she began to walk around the block where the church was and just look at the building. Something was drawing her. I believe it was the Spirit of God calling her, telling her that there was hope, but she wasn't sure. So she walked past the building a couple times. And then one day when she came by, you know what she saw? Balloons. There were balloons outside. There was banners outside, and there was people outside smiling. And she told me, I thought, wow, maybe that seems like a good place. Like maybe they do want me to come. And so she crossed the street and she got onto the corner, but she was still too terrified to come up to the steps. And there was a greeter who decided he wasn't going to wait on the inside. He was going to go to the door. So he went to the door and he opened it up and he was standing outside. Now this was March. It was still a little chilly out, but he knew, he had his glasses on and he was thinking, if anybody gets close, I want them to know that they belong here. So he was out there looking and smiling, and he saw her on the corner. And he waved at her and he said, hey, good morning. Come on in. He saw her. And she said, and he said, yeah, come on. So she sheepishly walked up the stairs, came up. He put his arm around her and he said, hey, what's your name? We're so glad you're here. We're so excited. Have you ever been here before? No, my name's Jen. Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to have such a good time. Come on in. Let me show you. We have a gift for you. We've been praying for you. She came in. She snuck into the back row. And she told me, she said, I cried the whole service. She said, I kept looking at the walls because I was sure they were going to start bleeding. She says, I knew I was dirty. She says, I knew that I didn't belong there. I knew God must be angry with me. I had ruined my life. I was hooked on drugs. I tried to kill myself. I knew that I had hoped there was hope, but I knew I was a bad person. And I cried the whole time, and I snuck out and I ran out before the service ended. She came back the next week. And as she got close to the church, that same greeter was standing outside and he said, Jen! And she said, and her face just lit up. It's been said that there's no sweeter sound to a person than the sound of their own name. And when you remember somebody's name, what a powerful thing. Jen, good to see you. Come on in. She thought, wow. She came in. That was grand opening Sunday. At the end of the service, there was an altar call. The gospel was presented, and we said, do you want to give your life to Christ? And Jen, with 12 other people, made her way up to the altar. She was there on her knees. We have a picture of her on her knees at the altar, giving her life to God. Amen. Did that do anything? Did that make a difference in her life? It's going to be 2 years now this March that she's been free from heroin. She had, From there, she was ushered into a small group. She was welcomed onto the team. She said, hey, you've got gifts. God wants to use you. She got baptized. She gave her life to Christ. She got baptized. She started serving. She started engaging. She didn't have any teeth. She lost her teeth from her medical condition. And when she didn't get a job earlier this year, she was so down about it. And one of the people, the Pastor Roger, he said, we've got some connections and let me hook you up with, and they hooked him up and some friends helped her out. And she's got a brand new smile, full on smile, big, beautiful white teeth. She's a new person on the inside. And just like anybody, she's in the cycle of discipleship. So she's still growing. But I got to tell you, 2 years later, I'm so glad that greeter put on the glasses. He didn't say, it's not my job to go outside. I'm not on the parking team. He didn't say, it's cold out. He was thinking, what if somebody comes who doesn't know Jesus? What if a guest shows up? Are they going to know they belong here? Are they going to know that they're loved? Are they going to experience it? So he went to the door. I'm so glad that he went out of his way. I'm so glad that he was thinking about what Jesus was thinking about when he said, open your eyes and look. The harvest is ready. All because someone put on the glasses of a first-time guest and saw the one far away and helped her become a family member. So remember this, friends. No matter what team you may find yourself serving on any given Sunday, please don't say, the greeters deal with guests. Please don't ever say, I'm on the tech team, so I really don't worry about what guests are experiencing. Quite frankly, if you're on the tech team, we're held hostage to your service. Nobody can get up there and change the slide for you when it's off. Nobody can get up there and turn the volume down when it is so loud that people's ears are bleeding. We are a hostage to your service. Thank you. By the way, we have an awesome tech team here at New Life Midway. We love you guys. Thank you for your faithfulness and going the extra mile. This Easter, this tech team has said we're going to add a rehearsal, 2 rehearsals during the week. We're going to start coming early for VIP. They're just thinking about how are we going to help people meet Jesus through our tech ministry. I love it. Please don't ever say that the guest isn't my concern. Because the guest is the concern of a godly leader. The guest is the concern of our leader, Jesus. And the guest is the concern of every single saint, because it's our job to help people far away become family, to help people far away become family. And to do that, we focus on what they're experiencing. Jesus put it this way. He said, the greatest commandment is to love others as you would love yourself. Treat them the way you want to be treated. Think about what they're experiencing. Put yourself in their shoes every single Sunday. Put on your glasses and see what could be with that first-time guest if they would just meet the Lord Jesus. But before they meet Jesus, they have to meet someone else, someone in this family who makes them feel like they are welcome. And my friend, that person is you.